Uh, Mr. Modi, you're sitting out there in Washington. What do you hear on a daily basis in your interactions with the academic community, with the business community, with the policy community, with the ordinary Nigerians in the diaspora about falling into recession, exiting recession, whether the positive GDP is very good? What's the sentiment out there from what you call the capital of the world, Washington, D.C., is?
Well, let me use the expression epistemological community. Think of that as the ecosystem, the competitiveness ecosystem, which has the policymakers, academia, business people, and everyone else. There's a positive sentiment. There's been, because of the stability in the foreign exchange market, there's more positivity about Nigeria. Because of also, obviously, the fact that there's a slowdown in the rate of the recession, and there's now optimism that, if anything, there'll at least be flatness in GDP before there's some growth. But what is slightly disturbing, even when you speak to some experts and economists, is that the leading indicators are not showing a dramatic shift going forward. So 6 months ago, you could predict that the rate of recession was going to improve, in that it was going to slow down and it could move to positivity. But there are some indicators that point to the fact that we're not out of the woods yet. There's not going to be strong growth. At best, it will be flat, if not a slight contraction, if there are no real changes. But investors are positive because now with the foreign exchange market, there's stability there, and some of the fundamentals. Inflation is still very high. It's slowing down and getting flat, might even slightly reduce, but it's still double digit, and that is coercive for the overall economy. But because of undervaluations, for example, in the stock market, it does make sense to see Nigeria as a good investment location for now, as long as the forex market continues to be stable and predictable.
Well, in terms of investors, Nigerians in diaspora, everyone else, what is their outlook in terms of near, mid to long-term sentiments, positivity for Nigeria going forward? Are they looking at the next 6 months? Are they looking at the next 2 years? Are they looking at the next political junction where the country will have to take a decision again, with another round of elections in the first quarter of 2019? Are they putting all of this together as the basis of saying, look, we're hopeful about Nigeria, we're positive, but how do you measure this moving forward? What period are they talking about?
Well, it's very contextual. It depends on who. Obviously, portfolio investors look differently from FDI, capital providers for the long term. And obviously, people who already have businesses have different views. But the general consensus is that the fundamentals of Nigeria are still very good, because it remains by far the most significant economy in Africa. There's a huge middle class, there's large population. So the potentials are very strong. You've heard this story over and over again, but this is what is generally believed. So long term, it remains a good investment. Valuations are pretty much low now, so entering at this point, again, it's good. Now, short-term sentiment, like I did say earlier on, there's a feeling that, look, the recession, the economy is not going to continue to contract, even if real average income is not going up, that's per capita. But there's a feeling that that is going to be flat going forward, which is not necessarily a bad thing for a place like Nigeria. Now, elections always come with some apprehension for emerging markets, especially a place like Nigeria. So 2019, the early elements of it are already trickling in. But there's far more confidence. Events that happened in our region, in terms of Ghana, in terms of Gambia, and even in Kenya, ironically, even with the annulment of the election, they point to stronger institutions on the continent. So the sentiment is not as, if you were speaking to many people in this community in 2013, 2014, just say 20 months to the election, there was a lot of trepidation, about what would happen with Nigeria. This time around, it's not the same sort of pessimism, which in itself is not a bad thing.
Let's move on to what the NCCN is working on, the National Council, National Competitiveness Council of Nigeria is working on what you call this subnational index. What is it all about? You say it's going to be out in October. What is the component? What are you working on this? What are the key things to look for in this report when it's finally released next month?
So basically, there's no real data are real policy supporting tools when it comes to competitiveness at the subnational level. So each state, there's data at the aggregate level, and there are organizations that have very, very, very useful indexes to measure this, like the World Economic Forum. The World Bank has a doing business that they measure. But on a state-by-state level, the comprehensive measure of competitiveness doesn't exist. So what we've done is to carefully study each state and craft out a framework for measuring their competitiveness. And the whole idea is, if you're a business that is operating in Lagos State, or your business operating in Benue State, what difference in productivity do you experience just by virtue of the geography you're operating in? And so we came up with pillars which we designed that are good metrics for measuring the elements of this that impact on productivity of businesses. The whole idea is we can compare and use a score, an objective score that is easily replicable to compare all 36 states and the FCT, and with the intention that there can be peer-to-peer learning so that best practices in state A can be adopted by state B. At the same time, it will help investors make decisions about where to locate. And within those, for policymakers, obviously, will help them by learning from other people. And then we'll try to engage again at the state level to see how they can improve these locations as business, as business areas. And we believe the whole idea is that if productivity of businesses increase, Nigeria has sufficient entrepreneurial talent and resources that if this happens, it will diversify the economy, which is sorely needed, because this recession we just saw is a cyclical event with the oil industry that led to that shock, right? But this time around, how it happened caused a recession. It's still going to happen again because oil prices long term might be stable, might even slightly move up, but they would also crash again. And we need to diversify, and the best way to diversify is by getting all the other sectors more productive. And once you have businesses growing and local investors and local people starting up businesses, they would increase employment, and that will tackle unemployment, which is one of the critical problems that we face. And also to create Machiavellian conditions where the economy can respond to things like exchange rate movement, things like interest rates, in a manner that would be counter-cyclical.
Chika Modi, out of Washington, D.C., the Chief Executive Officer of the National Council on Competitiveness of Nigeria. Thank you very much for speaking to us early this morning out of the United States. We appreciate that. Do have a great weekend.